Grab a cup of joe and let's gather round that hay bale. With your hosts, Ann from Andale Homestead, Cayce from Ormsby Farms, Monica from Bland's Promised Land Ranch, and Sandi from Suburban Homesteader, Wyoming, Arizona. Here they are. Hey, y'all, hey.
Hey, y'all. Hey, I'm Ann with Andale Homestead.
I'm Monica at Bland's Promised Land Ranch.
And this is Sandi from Suburban Homesteader, Wyoming, Arizona.
Hello, everyone. This is Cayce over at Welcome back to Around the Hay Bale. We are on season 6, y'all. Season 6. Can we even believe it? We talked to Sandi before we got live, and we said, Sandi, you're officially like a long-term cast member now. Like, this is your second season. It's official. It's official. You're not going anywhere. But we are so glad to be back for a 6th season. The exciting part of season 6 is that we are never going to leave you. We are going to be every Monday for year round for the rest of eternity, I'm guessing, until something YouTube stops. And we're talking about prepping. So maybe it's a government thing that shuts us down, but who knows? Okay. But I will say that today we are talking about why not to be a homesteader. Now, are you a prepper or are you a homesteader? That is the big question that we're going to kind of talk about today. And where do we draw the line? We think that that they kind of bleed into each other of, being a prepared homesteader or being a prepper. But let's discuss why we believe that being the quote unquote prepper is maybe not the route that you should go. Listen, we're not saying that being a prepper is bad. I'm just going to start off by saying that we have many prepper friends and we love all of them dearly. But we want to talk about the difference between prepper and prepared homesteader, which there is a big difference. And I'm going to bring Sandi in first to kind of talk about that. Because Sandi, in your opinion, what is the difference between a prepared homesteader and a prepper?
Well, I think it's really the mindset of it that a homesteader, though they are preparing, they're more preparing so that they have food and water and supplies and tools all year round. So they're canning, they're preserving, they're freezing so that they have food for that winter, knowing that next spring they are going to plant again to have another season. Or if they're going to have food inside, like through hydroponics. Now, there are seasonal occurrences with a homesteader. There could be a fire, a flood, a tornado, things like that a homesteader, a prepared homesteader would take into an account.
Absolutely.
Where, for me, when I think of the word prepper, I think of somebody that's really has the mindset of a huge worldwide national disaster, a collapse. Yes. I once heard somebody say the 3 B's: the Band-Aids, bullets, and beans.
Oh.
That was their definition of a prepper, which that is not really the definition of a prepper. But I think that for me, and honestly, this is just for me. Some people might not like it. But for me, I think that the probabilities, if I look at the probabilities of a prepared homesteader having the correct skills versus a prepper that learns skills but may never use those skills,
right?
I lean on the side of a prepared homesteader. What about you, Ann?
Well, I mean, I think that it's not a bad thing. Knowledge is never a bad thing anytime that we go around. But as Sandi was saying, what we're trying to encourage you is to be learners, to be experienced, to train ourselves. What I have worked really hard at doing is learning the skills to be able to do things in case I need to to make my own soaps, to make my own cleaners, to be able to grow my own food, even in the winter or the snow inside, to be able to do these things, to have the knowledge. But I don't particularly have to have everything ready for the next 10 years because I have the knowledge to be able to sustain myself year after year, in my opinion. So, what do you think, Monica, as far as something like that? It's that real fine line because we love our preppers. We really do. But what we're trying to say is, unfortunately, preppers got a really bad name out there in the community in the last several years as kind of crazies, the tinfoil hat people. And what we want to share with you is that homesteaders, prepared homesteaders, are about learning skills and what to do. And so, what do you think, Monica?
Well, I think that there's a lot, like you said before, like we've all said already, this bleeds into one another. Okay. I don't want to be called a prepper. One, because there's a poor connotation, and that maybe that's because of the whole apocalypse prepping shows that have been on TV.
Yeah.
People just hoard all this stuff and put it in the corner. I think that there is also a part of prepping that when people prep and they only consider themselves preppers, like you said, they're not learning skills. They're buying it and they're putting it in a way in a shelf, and then they're never using it. And then
Right.
8 years later, they're like, oh my gosh, I have an entire bin of stuff I never used. Well, guess what? It may be bad. Now, maybe you bought the freeze dried stuff that gives you a 25-year guarantee. Super great. Awesome. You spent all that money on stuff that you may not even like. And there's a difference too in becoming a prepper and becoming a prepared homesteader, or being a prepared person in general. Being a prepper, you're going to learn skills, right? You're going to, okay, fine. I'm a prepper. I want to know how to hunt. If I have to bug out, I need to know how to make shelter. Great. I agree. You should know that. As a homesteader, you should know how to build shelter. You should know how to start fire, how to filter water. There's a lot of
Absolutely.
skills as a prepper that you will learn that you will want to know as a homesteader. They completely
Yes.
mesh. But there are certain things that when I think back to 2020, I think, okay, I remember hearing everything was shutting down. And I thought, oh my gosh, what if there's a medical emergency? I have
Right.
homeopathy and all my natural medicinals, but I don't know how to stitch up a wound. I don't know how to do all these things. So I immediately thought, my mind went into like immediate prep mode. I need to know how to pack a wound. I need to know how to stitch. I need to know how to do all these things. I didn't think about that as a homesteader. I only thought of it as a prepper. Does that make sense? Like my prepping mind like went into full gear. Like I got to prepare. This is going to be the end of everything. This is how it's going to go down. Like my kid's going
Right.
outside. It's going to get mauled by a pig. I'm going to have to stitch its arm up. They're going to bleed to death, and that's it. Like, but you see how I went to the extreme. And I think
Right.
that a lot of times, unfortunately, we scare ourselves into prepping. And it's not about being prepared. It's just about being ready for the awfulness, the cataclysmic event
Be
that
ready
will
to fight.
end it's like this be ready, and it's going to be it. And I think that can be really a bad place to be, because it takes a lot out of you. Like that's a lot on your heart and a lot on your mind. And that's not a safe space to be in. So I think that there's something to be said for not being just a prepper, but being a prepared homesteader, being a person
Right.
that knows how to care for their land and care for their body and their mind, and do all the things together. Does that make sense? Like it's all got to work
Absolutely.
together, and you can't panic. And a lot of times being a prepper is just associated with that panic, that fight or flight, that go, go,
Yes.
go. And I can't live in that space. I
Yeah.
tried. I tried in 2020 for a little bit, and it was a bad space for me because I was scared, and I don't want to
Yeah.
be there.
Right.
I
Right.
can't. I mean, Sandy, does that make sense? Are you agreeing with me? I'm like waiting for you to shake your head and be
Oh,
like, yes,
oh,
Monica, you're good.
oh yeah. I think it's life is a balance, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you find yourself, if you consider yourself a homesteader or you consider yourself a prepper, but if you find yourself becoming socially isolated, that every news article you are reading into things, that can be a dangerous place. Now,
Absolutely.
are there some weird, crazy government things? Of course there are.
Yeah.
but not everything is that way. Sometimes it's just exactly what the news said. That's all it is. But one thing that, because I have some friends that are preppers, I do. And the thing that worries me is that it kind of gives them a false sense of security, that I have all this food, I have all this water, I have guns. Um, I have a pantry, I have guns myself. But there
Mhm.
is a line that when it becomes obsession or paranoia, that
Right.
scares me, and it hurts my heart to see somebody going through that, and they're isolating even from their close family or their friends,
Yeah.
because it's a balance, and we always have to be in balance. You know, luckily, all of us have a strong faith base
Yes.
that he supplies all of our needs. Now,
Mhm.
does he want us to? There are certain times in the Bible he told people to prepare. It's not like, but it wasn't always.
Mhm.
You know,
Right.
that it was specific things that he told us to do. Um, and it was always community. It was
Mhm.
always, no matter what was happening. And homesteaders are just so great with this, that if somebody, uh, the farm next to you, the person down the street needs something, you are right there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And a prepared homesteader has the ability to help that person.
Mhm.
Yes.
So,
What do you think?
there's, go
Oh, I'm
ahead. I'm
sorry.
sorry.
I was
Well,
just going to see
go
what
ahead.
Cayce
Go.
was.
You said.
I'm sorry.
No, finish. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask Cayce what, his experience, with, because he lives in a totally different place. And,
Yeah.
I live in Wyoming. There's guns and trucks, that's
Yeah.
just like this.
But there's, I think in all 4 areas, we could all relate to that. What do you think,
Yeah.
Casey?
Well, no, I think there was a funny Instagram video. I can't remember this woman's Instagram name, but she's like Southern Charm or Southern Mama or something. And she talks about in the South, we have pit bulls and pew pews. Um, and,
Yes.
and that is so true. And I think while I sit back and I listen, because that's one thing that I've learned as being a prepared homesteader, is surrounding yourself with people that you can sit back and you can listen and learn. And if
Right.
you can sit back and listen and learn certain skills,
Yeah.
you're already being prepared for what's going to happen.
Right.
And one thing going into this episode, now I'm just going to say, if you're loving this episode so far and you're wanting to see our face, come over to our YouTube channel because we are live, just BT dubs. But
Around the hay bale.
around the Hay Bale, yes, scan that QR code. But when we were talking about this episode and how we were going to approach this topic, because it's a very controversial topic for some
Mhm.
people. I remember Sandi talking to me because I was very nervous because I've just moved from a 10-acre homestead to a 1-acre homestead. And I'm like, well, I don't have any room to do this, this, and this, or I don't have the space to do this, this, and this. What am I going to do? I'm going to be a terrible homesteader because I don't have 900 jars of stuff in my pantry. And Sandi was like, Cayce, let's truly stop and think. How
Mhm.
much do you actually go through in a
Right.
because listen, canning has a shelf life. As much as I think we don't want to think it does, it does. And so when you're being a prepper and prepping for 10 years, you really can't prep for 10 years with canned food because it's about a 3-year shelf life. So if you can think in your mind, and we're going to talk more because this is a 2-part series that we're doing. We'll talk more about this kind of stuff on the second part. But if you can go into being prepared and saying, okay, now what can I do to learn things to grow or to make the soap, as Anna said, or make the laundry soap and
Mhm.
Mhm.
prepare myself for a year
Right.
and then have bigger things that I prepare for 3 or 5 years? I think that is what we're saying is a prepared homesteader rather than a prepper, is having the knowledge, having the self-sustainability to
Yes.
get your family through tough times, whether it is, like Sandi said, the tornado, the snowstorm, or government shutdown, or this. I mean, it kind of balances out. If you have that knowledge and you know what chickens to have that will get you meat year round, you don't
Yes.
have to prep chicken for 10 years in your pantry, because we all know a boy and a girl makes another life.
Mhm.
It's
There
the
you
same
go.
with chicken. If you got a boy and you got a girl, 90% of the time, unless your rooster's a little off, which that's a different episode, um, you are going to get a chick out of that egg. And that chick then turns into a chicken that you either can keep if it's a girl for more eggs, or if it's a boy, you're processing it to be meat. That is self-sustainability
Yeah.
to me. So
Right.
I don't need to have 10 years of freeze-dried chicken on my shelf, even though I would love to. August and Farms, if you want to send us stuff, we're not saying that.
We ain't saying no.
We're not saying no. But what we're saying is, listen to some of the things that Monica and Ann and Sandy are saying, and myself, on maybe not go to panic mode right away when
Yes.
you're prepping, and thinking, what can I learn? Can I learn to make my own soap so I don't have to spend $600 and buy soap for the next 10 years?
Hmm.
Yes. Can I
Right.
learn how to can and learn how to grow tomatoes so every year I can get tomatoes that go into a jar? Yes.
Hmm.
Now, ammunition and guns, that's a different episode. For that's out of my wheelhouse. I mean, I'm prepared for that. That's out of my wheelhouse. I'm prepping for that. But that's my forefront knowledge on this, is that I truly think that is how people need to think of this. Is not that we're bashing on preppers, but
No.
I think that this is definitely something that if you learn the skill sets that we promote on Around the Hay Bale, not saying that we're know all be all, that we're Jesus on this channel, but if you learn certain skills, you're already a prepared homesteader. You're already ready to go if something was to happen. You have the knowledge to do those things. So that's me. So now
There we go.
soapbox, and I'm going to pass it back over to Ann. So if you want to step in my soapbox, you
Well, honestly, in my opinion, there are a lot of similarities between a prepper and a prepared homesteader. A ton. What the difference is my heart and my mind and my faith, and understanding that, um, there's some things we just cannot prepare for, or we can think anytime. Look, y'all, anytime that you think you're ready and then your electricity and your water goes off for a month, find out just how ready you are, because there
Mhm.
are some other things that are going on. What I am trying to focus on as far as being prepared is, if I get caught short in a storm and I need something to cook on or some light in the house, I can use other items, thinking out of the box. That's
Mhm.
knowledge to me. Right now, the Dollar Tree's still open, so I can go buy a dollar jug of shampoo or a dollar jug of clothes washing detergent. I don't have to reinvent the wheel for everything that we have,
Mhm.
because it's still available right now. But if for some chance it wasn't, as we had back in 2020 and 2021 when things were shut down and it was supposed to be 2 weeks and it ended up being a year, then I've got that knowledge where I know what to do and how to get my family through hard times. And
Mm.
Sandy, you had a saying, it was something about threes. Can you share with us the threes? It was
Oh,
3 days, three
yeah.
something.
I always think that you should be prepared like your electricity or a snowstorm in Wyoming, right?
Mhm.
So you should have enough food and water for 3 days, 3 weeks, and 3 months.
Yes.
If you can do that, it's not breaking the bank.
Right.
Because being a prepper can be very financially straining,
Mhm.
you know?
Mm.
Um, and if you just say, okay, I can have under my bed enough food and water for 3 days, 3 weeks, or 3 months. I
Right.
can do that. That is not going to break the bank. I was talking to a person, a friend of mine actually, that is they're very boastful that they're a prepper, and that's okay.
Absolutely.
I love them to death. And they were telling me about they had enough for 3 to 4 years, of everything, food, water. They had tablets to make the water good. They had all this stuff. And I said, and what after 3 years?
Right.
And they looked at me like a deer in the headlights look, because though they had a lot of supplies, they hadn't taught themselves gardening. And they had seeds that they had bought in the Mylar bags, that if they needed it, they could. But with gardening, it's not just putting seeds in the ground.
Mhm.
So a prepared homesteader will have practiced those skills over and over again. And the skills that they learn from other people, they will incorporate into their homestead. And so it's a
That's right.
continuous thing. Now, do you do those skills every single year? Maybe not.
Right.
But you have enough knowledge and skills so that if, say, there was a snowstorm and your neighbors are over, you can help them. That is a big difference to me between preppers and a prepared homesteader. A lot of them have told me, well, if people come to take my stuff, I'll shoot them.
Right.
That scares me.
Yes.
But then I know other preppers that are just the most giving people ever.
Yes.
And and honestly, I wouldn't call them preppers. I would call them prepared homesteaders, because they are working their land and they're doing their stuff. And I think sometimes that quote unquote word can be such a turnoff to people. And it can be, and I think it's easy to become very isolated because you think you have the right knowledge.
Mhm.
And it hurts my heart sometimes
Right.
when I talk to some people.
Yeah.
I think that the big difference between just calling yourself a prepper and being a prepared person in general, I'm going to say person and I'll explain why, but I think the difference really too is you put a lot of your trust in yourself, like you're saying. As a prepper, you trust what you have and what you've done and what you've put away. And you could always be like, oh no, God gave me all this. Okay, cool. God gave you all this. But you're putting all that trust is in you and in all the things that you've built up and stored up in your storehouse. But even in the Bible, in the storehouses, they shared it.
Right.
In times of famine, they shared it. And I think it's been interesting because there's this big movie, Angel Studios put out this movie called Homestead.
I watched it.
Yes.
And if you've seen it, you'll notice that, and no spoilers, but if you don't want to hear anything about it, you need to just earmuff for
Plug your ear.
earmuff for 3 minutes, come back in 3 minutes. But basically the movie has such a good premise to it, because in the movie you have this massive space, this compound basically that this family has. And the minute things go wrong, they have a group of people that immediately come. They're basically like a MAG, right? They're mutual assistance group. They all kind of come into play. And in the movie, there is people at the gate constantly. And I don't want to give anything away, but there's this very real conflict inside. And with the wife, there's a very big internal conflict. Do I open the gates or do I not? And she goes out and tries to feed them and this and that. And in the end, it comes full circle and it culminates to this beautiful ending where she does whatever she needs to do. And I won't give away the whole thing, but I will say that is a very big conflict with people. Do I help people? Do I not help people? Who do I put in my group? Who do I do this with? I really feel like you just need to let the Lord guide you and all that. So
Right.
if you're a prepper and you just have all these things, that's okay. But I encourage you and I challenge you to look outside of that box for a minute and think, how are the things that I have? How can it not only help me, but help my family group? And how can we work together to be skillful and make this work better? Because the major cataclysmic events, it may come in your lifetime. Okay. You may have a very horrible experience with severe weather. You may have something rip through your community. You may have fire or tornadoes or whatever it is. You may have all those natural disasters hit you and you need those items. But sometimes if you have it all stored up and then you have a loss in your house, it's all gone anyway. So you can't really prepare for that.
Take your house away.
Yeah. But it's one of those things that I think that you just need to sit back and think, okay, how can I make this be more than it is? And another thing, there's a lot of people that don't want to, that can't be called homesteaders, right? You're listening to this and you're like, yeah, but I don't have a homestead. I literally live in an apartment. And I'm
Right.
listening because I wanted to know how to do this why. Or I
Yeah.
call myself a prepper and I live in a small space and I don't really homestead. So, what do I do? Well, it's
Right.
a bad thing. You can still do things. You can still have skills and you can be a person that comes in to maybe there's a place that if there was this huge cataclysmic event and you needed people, you could be a part of someone's group and go to a place where you could help.
Right.
If you're really looking at that, if you're thinking, okay, if something happens and I have to get out of the city, that's okay to prepare for that.
Right.
A while back, we talked about different things. My husband works in downtown Dallas, and we don't prep for extremes here. Okay, we prep for just life. Okay, what happens if Eric loses his job? Well, I've got a bunch of food in there, and we could get by for a little bit. But we have a lot of people, so we just have to ration it out. But we thought, and we had to talk about a really very real scenario. He's in the middle of Dallas. What happens if the city starts to burn? If people riot, if things happen and he can't drive home? It's a very
Right.
extreme event, but we needed to have that discussion. How do we deal with that? We had a discussion. I said, I'll make you a paper map. Make sure you have maps. I'll make sure you have a little bag in your car. And for a period of time, you can carry this bag with you. That'll
Mhm.
make you feel more comfortable. And we felt like God wanted him to do, just kind of be prepared that way.
Mhm.
That's not something we do all the time, but it was something we really just kind of relied on God to give us guidance and direction. He knew how to get
Sure.
out of the city. He knew how to get into the city. He knew how to leave his space to get home and be safe. And I knew how long it would take him. I
Mhm.
thought, okay, it's going to take him up to 26 hours or 28 hours, whatever it is, to walk home. If he has to
Mhm.
walk, does he have good tennis shoes? We prepared for a big cataclysmic thing, right? A big event,
Well, that's not a bad thing at all.
but we didn't revolve our world around that. And that's the
Right.
difference to become, and like Sandy said, that kind of gets scary. It kind of feels scary sometimes that people are just preparing. They're like, I'll shoot them. I
Well,
mean,
it's very frightening.
it
And to
can be. I mean,
I
but
mean,
we
even
talked about the worst case scenarios, but we also live for the best case scenarios.
Right.
right. Right. There are some things you just cannot prepare for. I
Yeah.
mean, as far as the mountains of North Carolina, the Appalachian Mountains, and I live in North Carolina, to have an entire community wash away, or several communities just simply go right down the river, is not anything that you can prepare for. But they rallied because they
Yes.
rallied together. They became an amazing team despite whatever government agencies, it doesn't matter. Those were peripheral because the communities came together.
Mhm.
They made sure that other people had food and water and clothing and blankets and things like that. And now there's more outside intervention as far as agencies and
Mhm.
things like that. But it was about the people, and it was about them working together and not saying, I have this over here and yours is washed away. So too bad, so sad. You can bring me nothing. So you are nothing to me. Go on to another place. Go, keep going because I got to have mine. We don't know when we're going to get any power back or water or any of those things. But instead, they opened up all the avenues and their springs were open to people so they could get fresh water. And they even had jugs that they were giving them. And just does your heart so good. That's the kind of preparer that I want to be.
Right.
Someone that can help, not, I don't know how to say it, but not hoard.
Hoard. Yeah,
Help,
that's the word.
help, but not hoard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I'm
That's
still
true.
hoarding because I got a whole bunch of stuff.
But you have it with a good intent in mind,
Right.
Of being able to share. Yeah.
You have the idea. That's why we prepare things. That's why we prep here.
Yeah.
I prep my space because I know that if something happens, horrific, cataclysmic, world shaking, and people have to leave their space, they're coming to my house. They're bugging in. They're coming here, and I'll be a place of gathering so that I can feed people and we can work together as a group.
Mhm.
We have a garden. We have things that we know, and we have skill sets to do that. And so it's not necessarily a bad thing to be a prepper in that sense. But I think that when it gets to be your obsession, like Sandy was saying too, and it becomes, oh, it's all about me, or my people only, my family only, That's where you
Get
need to
ready
be mindful
because
too,
yeah,
and be open, because you
Yeah.
never know what God has for you to do. You never know who you're set to help.
Right.
I've had my kids say to me, "Well, would we let such and such come to our house if the world shut down, we had an EMP or something happened,
yeah,
would we let such and such come to our house?" And I'm like, "We would let whomever God would want to us to be here. If
Right.
they could get here and God needed them to be here, and we felt God wanted us to take care of them, then yes, we would."
absolutely.
Right.
Because that's the type of mindset that I truly believe you should have as a prepper. And I really believe that the people that I know that are preppers, that I would say call themselves hardcore preppers, I think that they have that mindset right now. Like, I feel like if I needed anything and I had to go to them and be like, "Hey, I need you. I can offer you whatever I can offer you. I need your help. We need to work together." I feel like they would see that and work with us, you know? So
Right.
I feel like those people are reasonable enough to go, "Yeah, we're going to work as a team."
Yeah, it's a heart thing.
It
You know,
really is.
And we do have wonderful prepper friends. We
We
do.
do. We
Yeah,
do.
absolutely. And I rely on their knowledge often.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, I really do. They're incredibly knowledgeable. And I hope that they rely on ours as well. That would be something
Well,
awesome.
I know some people that rely on the information, and you're probably listening to this episode and like, Sandy, Casey, Monica, and this has been a great episode. But what about the skills that I need to know?
Yeah.
Don't worry, because if you stay tuned for part 2, we're going to talk about that. So we're really thankful that y'all came and listened to us talk about the difference between a prepared homesteader and a prepper. And again, this is just our opinion. Anything that we put out on our podcast is our opinion. And we hope that you take it that way and not, as I jokingly say, the gospel, even though it's pretty close. But you want to come back next week, we are going to talk about skills that we believe you should have to
Absolutely.
be a prepared homesteader, such as gardening, such as soap making, such as knowing when to can, what to can, that kind of stuff. So we hope you join us next week on Round the Hay Bale, episode 2 of season 6, craziness. But we will see y'all next episode. Bye, y'all. Bye.
Bye.